Hi everyone and welcome to the Deck National League podcast. I'm your host Dan, this is my first time on. Welcome to the show. I'm joined by three lovely human beings. Craig, how are you doing mate? You okay?
Hiya mate, I'm very well thanks. Lovely to be here. Looking forward to doing another one of these and meeting yourself for the first time.
Yeah, spot on mate, thank you. Mark, you okay?
Yeah, doing well my man. Couple of interesting subjects to cover.
Yeah, plenty. And we are joined by Dave, the Morecambe fan. We want to get your insight mate. How are things with you?
Well, it's great that Mark and Craig and yourself are doing well, lads. I mean, it's great that some people are, I suppose. But thanks for having me on. Just a shame it's not in slightly better circumstances.
Yeah, it's such a tough subject because, like, even just from the outside looking in, it just seems so. It can be fixed, and there seems to be such a bit of a pushback from Whittingham as to not being wanting to do it and things like that. So I'd love to get your take on it, mate. So how are things looking at the moment?
Bleak, in a word, Dan. Absolutely bleak. Morecambe on life support. I think that's probably the best way to describe it. And I think, as you've said, it's at the point now where it's almost an impossible situation. I won't bore listeners and viewers with a huge history of what's happened in the last 3 years or so, but suffice to say that we are now in a situation where we have a buyer ready to complete a purchase. We have that prospective buyer who have put literally millions of pounds into the club over the last 18 months or so to bankroll the club and to keep us going for as long as we have. And there is some obstacle in the way, whatever that obstacle might be, where despite everything being ready to go, the current owner of the club, a guy called Jason Whittingham from a company called Bond Group Investments, just will not complete the transaction. We're now at the point where we are, I think it's getting on for 2 weeks now, overdue the wages for June, the complete payroll, which is about £140,000. There's VAT due, there'll be creditors need paying. So with every passing day that the takeover doesn't go ahead, these bills keep mounting up and up and up. And the prospective new owners, a company called Punjab Warriors, who are a group of Indian gentlemen and people, they have said that they will settle all the debts. They will pay the outstanding wages and everything as soon as it's signed on the dotted line. And for reasons that only Jason Whittingham himself knows, the deal still hasn't been complete. That's against the backdrop of our board, some members who have been directors for decades, for 35, 40 years or so. They all resigned en masse last Wednesday because they saw that the only way out would be administration. The owner pushed back from that and said, right, well, I will remove you from the board if that's the route that you want to try and go down. It then looked as if the deal was going to be completed on Friday of last week. So the board were then invited back to become directors again to facilitate the sale. Came out a statement on Friday that said that there was one or two issues, still snags to sort out. It'll all be done on Monday. Yesterday, as we speak right now on Tuesday evening. Monday came and went. The board then resigned again. So there are currently no directors of Morecambe Football Club Limited at this moment that we speak right now. And we are stuck in this impossible limbo situation. We've got our first pre-season friendly tonight, playing a non-league team called Longridge Town. I don't know what kind of team or players have turned up for that. And it's as bad as it gets,
Yeah, like I say, for me, just like the outside looking in, I've been checking in every day on Morecambe's X feed and everything, just seeing what's been going on. And like I say, one day the board are resigning, then they're coming back, then they're resigning again. There just seems to be such a limbo around it, and I can only imagine what yourself and your fan base and everybody's going through, and not to mention the players with the wages not being paid, the staff, the volunteers at the stadium as well, and everything. It's just such a horrible situation, isn't it?
It's really difficult because without this progressing, nothing else can progress. And we're completely, if you park for just a moment the very existence of Morecambe Football Club as a National League side, if you park that for a moment, nothing else can progress. We can't announce players. We've announced one new signing. I know for a fact that we've got the people through the door. Whether they've actually officially signed a contract or whether we've just agreed terms with them, I don't know. But there are other people that we need to announce. We haven't announced our new kit yet. The fixtures are coming out at 1 o'clock tomorrow lunchtime. And there's all the excitement that should be building up around that. And there's none of that. There's absolutely none of that, because there can't be, because we're stuck in this ridiculous situation. But the non-payment of the wages, and I know we're not the only team to ever go through. We're talking, Mark, weren't we, off air about obviously the Macclesfield situation, and obviously that's starting to come good again now, of course. But the fact is, there are full-time members of staff. Some of them have been at the club for a very, very long time, who can't afford to pay their bills this month because they've only been paid a third of their salary. And I think that's because the ex-former current / directors moved heaven and earth to just get them a little bit of their salary, because there's no money in the budget to pay anything else. And this is people's careers, it's people's livelihoods. And as it stands, there's one person and one person alone who is causing all of this aggravation. And it seems, to all intents and purposes, and I've spoken to a lot of people, I know a lot of people inside the club, of course, and outside in fans as well, there doesn't seem to be any kind of logical explanation as to why there is this stumbling block. But until that's resolved, the future of our club is looking pretty bleak, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Dave,
Sorry, go on, Mark. You're right.
yeah, Dave. On the basis that when Jason Whittingham finally gets rid of himself from the club and sells to the Punjab Warriors, would you think then, would it be an idea for clubs who have either been in the situation of administration, or have gone bankrupt completely, to have those owners put on a football blacklist? So nothing like this, so they can never get hold of a football club ever again.
Well, it's a good. I mean, the short answer is yes, Mark. Absolutely.
Mm.
But where Morecambe are concerned, it's a bit of a long story, and I know we don't want to talk about this for forever and a day, but it goes back a very long time where Morecambe are concerned. All you need to do is just do a quick Google of Jason Whittingham, Worcester Warriors, and the sad tale of what happened there. Now, the reality is, when Bond Group took over Morecambe in 2018, we were in a very similar position. We were financially in dire straits. We needed somebody to come and bail us out, and the Bond Group did just that. And at the time that they took the club over, they said all of the right things and everything was fine. And it was fine for a good couple of years. And then we had the pandemic. Then, against all the odds, we got promoted into League One, and we stayed there for 2 years. So there were some good financial times, but the backdrop of that was, of course, Worcester Warriors were just going down the pan. And then they obviously went out of business. And there's a lot, and this is the one thing that worries me as a fan and as a journalist, as a commentator. The one thing that worries me is this appears to almost be a mirror image of what happened at Worcester Warriors a few years ago. It just drags on. The ownership drags on and on and on. Doesn't quite slip into administration. It just drags all the time for weeks and weeks and weeks. Nothing gets resolved. A firm new takeover bid comes in. They get almost to the finishing line, and then it doesn't quite cross over and get completed. And then Worcester Warriors went out of business. And my fear is that it's happening all over again. And if we go into administration, which a lot of fans see, I'm not saying as a magic bullet as such, but certainly as a solution, it's a nuclear solution to get Jason Whittingham out of the club. I think the reality is, if we go into administration, there's a very strong chance that we wouldn't be accepted into the National League. I know we've been accepted at the AGM a few weeks ago, and fixtures will be released tomorrow, of course, but I look at what's happened to other clubs, National League clubs who have gone into administration, and they got booted straight out the league. No, thank you. Bury, of course, weren't accepted into the National League, and probably should have been, but they were like, well, no, mate, you've got to work yourself back up from the top. So I think that is as serious as the situation is, unfortunately, and it's hard at the moment to see any other way out unless miraculously Jason Whittingham has a sleep on it tonight and has a change of heart.
Yeah, I mean, just to go off the back of what Mark said, it's so annoying that this has happened before, and nothing's been learned. That it's the same person. It's a very similar situation, and nothing seems to have been learned from it. And like Mark says about the blacklist, I know it'd probably be a lot of like legalities and things like that, but I feel like there's so many owners, especially in recent times. We were talking before we went on air about Reading, Sheffield Wednesday, just to name a few, that these owners need to be held accountable, but a lot of the time they just walk straight into another club. And
you need to remember, Dan, as well, that the clubs that you mentioned there, and with Morecambe, the fit and proper persons test, the owners and directors test that they have to go through, they were nowhere near as strict, even 5 or 6 years ago, as what they are now. And that's been the case with Morecambe's prospective new owners, this Punjab Warriors, is they have taken a long time. They've taken a year to pass all of the EFL test. Now, no, obviously we just got relegated into the National League, but it took them a year to be able to pass the test. So I suppose in one way that gives them some kind of legitimacy because they've passed these stringent tests, and some of those tests show us how much you've got in the bank to sustain the club for a couple of years and all that, and where the funds have come from, and it's not crypto and it's not all that kind of stuff. So they must have that legitimacy and that level of realism, which is great on one hand, but the other side of the coin is it took a year to get through the tests. And just down the road, Wigan Athletic a couple of years ago were a day or two from going bust. They got taken over in 48 hours because it was, there's your money, thanks very much, and it was fine. So there's always that side of the coin as well, because not much is known about Punjab Warriors, actually. If you Google Punjab Warriors, nothing comes up.
Yeah,
and that's the other side of the coin as well. We don't know anything. I mean, they might be great. They might be the best thing that's ever happened to Morecambe. They might be the worst thing. We just do not know much about them, other than they have said, when we take the club over, we will tell you everything you need to know. Well, I suppose it's too late then, because they've got the keys, haven't they? So that's the quandary. That's another side to the quandary. So, we're well and truly in the mud. Well and truly.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking before we went on air. Sorry about that. Just that we were saying about football's just on a knife edge all the time. Like one wrong decision, it's always like that. But to see it playing out like this, when it by all accounts from what I've heard, that he just needs to sign on the dotted line. From what I've heard today, like just on social media and stuff, is that the case?
It appears to be the case, Dan. Yeah, there must be some stumbling block. Now, I know, and this isn't difficult information to get hold of if you do a little bit of research on Companies House, there are a couple of charges that are being held over Morecambe Football Club Limited, and there's a charge against Bond Group, the parent company, the majority shareholders as well. Is it somebody who has one of the charges putting the block on it? Is it Jason wanting more money or trying to up the ante? Because I think realistically in his business empire, Morecambe Football Club is probably his only realistic asset that he can make any money out of. But as I've said to you previously, Punjab have already put figures out there, and it's quite an unprecedented step, really, that prospective no owners actually, in black and white, have said, look, we've given Bond Group the neck end of £5 million here. 5 million quid, and for a club the size of Morecambe, that is a fortune. I know in higher up the chain it's pennies, isn't it? But 5 million quid. I mean, I've not got that in the bank. I don't know if you probably have, Dan, but that's a lot of money. It's a lot of money, isn't it? It's a lot of money to almost gamble on. I don't like using the word gentleman's agreement, but that's effectively what it has been. It's almost been on a handshake that, don't worry, lads, give us the money to sustain the club until you pass this silly EFL test. I don't know why they're taking so long. Goodness me. I mean, I think Punjab, it's taken them far longer than what they anticipated as well, actually, to be absolutely fair. But they have now passed the test. They are legitimate owners in the eyes of the rules and the regulations as it currently stands. And it now seems that Jason, for whatever reason, is going back on the deal. But we're going to go further into the mud very quickly if it's not resolved, because as how we've got wages to pay, and that's people's livelihoods. We've got a VAT bill due, so HMRC will be on our case. There's going to be other creditors on a daily basis who are not paid at the moment. Do the staff keep working? How long do they keep working for without pay? Because they're not being paid for June. We're almost halfway through July, and it's the snowball effect, isn't it? So lots to consider. Yeah,
and I think that's kind of what gets lost, isn't it? Where it's kind of the people think obviously just about what's going on with Whittingham, but it's the fans, it's the staff, it's the player, everyone's livelihood, like you've already mentioned. It's so sad to watch. It really is.
I think we'd got our heads round about being relegated from League Two, as disastrous as it was last season, and we had 18 great seasons in the EFL, and our time was up. We probably stayed in the league maybe a little bit longer than what people thought we might have done, but we'd got, as a fan base, I think we'd got our head around the fact that we were, it was new adventures in non-league, and there's not much of a gap in terms of ability and the teams between League Two and the National League. They're quite interchangeable these days, aren't they? And we've not played such and such for ages, and it'd be great to go back to this stadium again. And it's all of that excitement, isn't it? And I suppose it doesn't matter who you support around this table or in the National League. It's the pre-season euphoria, if you like, of counting down the days to the fixtures being released and the new kit coming out. And it's only 2 weeks now till I can stop going shopping with the missus again and start going to the football on a Saturday. It's I know it's a stereotypical thing to say, isn't it?
It's true.
But
it's true, though.
That is the very fabric of what being a football fan is all about. And Morecambe have not, since the season ended on the 6th of May, I think it was, we've not had that. We've not had any of it, and I just feel my heart breaks for the fans, my heart breaks for the staff, for the players. We're going to lose players. We've already lost one. David Satonda signed for Rochdale. He was under contract. He's just been allowed to leave and sign for another club. One of our targets, who was definitely going to sign for us, he's gone to a club in Northern Ireland today, as I understand it. So we're losing players rapidly, and the sooner that it ticks down to the start of the season, the less chance we've got of, even if we do still exist, of actually being in any kind of fit state to start the season. And sorry, I'll go off my soapbox now.
I think Adam Lewis has gone to Chesterfield as well.
Well, Adam Lewis was rejected a new deal in the summer, so we knew he was. So we knew he was off. So Adam Lewis has gone. A few others have gone, but we had a number of players who we gave a 1-year contract, because this is the other thing, because of the rubbish financial situation. For the last 3 years, we've only been able to offer 1-year contracts. And of course, that limits the pool of players that you can attract to your football club, because at our level, you want a bit of security, don't you? You want at least a 2-year deal. You've got a mortgage, you've got kids and family and stuff. So we've had to fish in a very small pond. But we had options on a number of players. Adam Lewis wasn't one of them, but we activated options on, I think it was 8 other players. And I'd say probably half of them are going to walk now because, you're going to get yourself fixed up, aren't you? Why wouldn't you?
Yeah, this is exactly what happened at Macclesfield Town. I'm having flashbacks to when our illustrious owner at the time, he was turning down bids left, right, and centre because he wanted a ridiculous amount of money for the club. There was just absolutely no way. But as you say, we got into the National League. We got kicked out, and then before the HMRC said, "Look, enough is enough." But you've had the Morecambe MP saying, "Get on with it." Has there been anything since the MP spoke up, or has it just been, right, I've said my bit, off I go?
The MP's been very proactive, in fairness to Lizzie Collins, but she's quite limited about what influence she can have, to be honest. She's been brought up in Parliament. She's been one of the key members about getting the football governance bill to the state that it's currently in. I think it's having its 2nd or 3rd reading in Parliament this week, and hopefully then it will get ascended to the Lords and it'll become a law. But it's far too late for Morecambe, and of course any football regulator's got to actually have some teeth and some power to make a difference. If it's just a figurehead, it's a complete waste of time, isn't it? So she's done her best. The Shrimps Trust have been absolutely incredible as well in everything that they've tried to do. They divide opinion with the fan base, and it's not an opinion I share, because I don't think people quite realise the lengths that they go to try and resolve situations as trusts, fan-led trusts should do. But they've done an enormous amount of work over the last couple of weeks to try and resolve this situation. Other people, the great and the good of the football world, have all condemned what's going on. But the fact remains, if one person doesn't sign a contract, they don't sign a contract, and you can have all the debates in Parliament you like, and it can be on Sky Sports News till the cows come home, but it doesn't change anything, does it?
Do you
No.
feel like it's had enough media coverage, or do you think it's kind of slid under the radar a little bit? Because, like you said, you mentioned Sky Sports News there. I've barely seen anything on there. And would you think the pressure from higher up would cause any ripple effect, or do you think it's just what it is now?
I think the fact that the national press haven't covered us is an absolute scandal, to be honest, Craig. I really do. And I say that as a member of the press myself at local level. The severity of this is off the charts. It's almost unprecedented. It's not completely unprecedented. And I know people will say to me watching this now, well, what about Reading, and what about Sheffield Wednesday, and what about Macclesfield, like you said, and Bury and other clubs, and all the other teams in years gone by have gone to the wall and had to rebuild from scratch. I get all that, but the fact that we've had no national coverage at all, yeah, you get it on the odd national Facebook fans banter Facebook page and that kind of stuff, but we should be on the national news. We should be on Sky Sports. We should be on the back page of the national newspapers with this. And nobody's touched it. If we go out of business in a couple of days' time, and let's make no bones about it, in a week, Morecambe Football Club Limited might not exist. We could be liquidated. That's how serious the situation is. They'll be all over it then, like vultures, when it's far too late.
Yeah.
Now, whether it would have had an influence,
it is, but it's too late.
Would it have had an influence? Would it put pressure on the ownership to make a different, a better decision? Who can tell? But it's been an and I say this is my personal opinion. This isn't the opinion of anybody I work for or the football club necessarily, but I think it's been an absolute scandal, an absolute disgrace that with the lack of national coverage.
Yeah, terrible. I mean, again, I'll go back to when Macclesfield Town were being courted by Joe Seeley. And Sky Sports, the most ironic ones out of it, they were camping outside the ground. They were getting excited, and the circus never came to town because of the owner. But I just feel in the times of Morecambe, I mean, last season you signed 15 players in one hit, in one day. Did you, at the time when you saw all these signings suddenly come in, thinking, now what's happened here that we've had to do all this now? Were there alarm bells ringing then?
There's been alarm bells ringing, Mark, for 2 or 3 years or more, to be honest, even when we were in League One and even when we got promoted in 2021, really, we knew that the writing was on the wall in terms of that. 15 players is quite a legendary thing, actually. The reality was quite different. The players had been signed in about a 3-week spell before then, and for various reasons, the main one being we literally weren't allowed, due to our financial issues, we weren't allowed to register any players. So they'd all signed a contract on basically our manager, Derek Adams, saying, looking them in the eyes and going, it will be sorted, lads, before the start of the season, don't worry. But we couldn't actually register them with the EFL until the day that they were all announced. And of course, we had our first pre-season friendly 2 days later. So the club couldn't drip them all out as you normally would. We had to just announce them in the block. So to the outside world, it seemed quite weird that you've signed 15 players in a day. The reality was they were all in the building a few weeks previously. But it makes a good story, doesn't it? But the writing was on the wall back then because the wages have been late 3 times in the past. We've had points deductions. We've had transfer embargoes. We've had warnings for not paying bills and not having money in accounts. And it's been going on for a very, very long time.
Sounds all too familiar. Do you think Jason Whittingham found the promotion to League One a bridge too far in his finances? Did he look at that and think, uh-oh?
I think, honestly, and this is my personal opinion, I think when they took the club on, because Bond Group's business model, in a nutshell, is they basically flip companies quickly. So they buy, not necessarily sports clubs and companies, but they buy a company for a good price. They keep hold of it for a short spell of time, and then they flip it, make a profit, move on to the next one. Good business model. Pawnbrokers, basically.
Oh, no. Absolute dog and pony show.
Well, Your words, Mark, not mine. But yeah, I
It's
don't.
just-
I don't disagree. And I think what happened with Morecambe is I think that was their plan. Despite the fact when they took the club over, they said all the right things about growing the fan base and the building this, that, and the other. I think they were only in it for a short period of time, a year or two, and then they were going to move on and make a profit and then move on to the next owner. Away you go. But two things happened. Firstly, the pandemic hit, so they were a bit scuppered. And then against all the odds, we got promoted into League One. And then suddenly, of course, you get your COVID payments, you've got bigger crowds in League One, and suddenly we've tripled our home season ticket sales. And so I think probably at that point, and obviously Worcester Warriors was just starting to go south at that point as well.
Mm.
I think they thought, well, do you know what, I can probably hold on here for a bit longer, probably squeeze a few more quid out of this. And then it's gone downhill very fast since then, unfortunately.
Absolutely suicidal attitude, it really is. But with the promotion comes the bigger bills, and it just sounds to me, you might as well get Brook Bond tea bags in running the place. But I don't think they had the bit. I mean, was there anybody in Bond Holdings who actually knew anything about football itself?
I would say it's unlikely. They obviously had an interest in sport, and they bought Worcester Warriors rugby union team. So I think they just, to be honest, I think they just saw us as their latest cash cow. To be honest, it's as simple as that, really. And if they'd have bailed out when they wanted to bail out, I mean, it's all ifs, buts, and maybes, isn't it? If the pandemic hadn't have hit, they might have sold us in 2020. We might not be in the National League. We might still be in League One. If they'd have sold us 2 years ago, we might have got relegated. It's all ifs, buts, and maybes. But the reality is, we are where we are. I would have loved to have been on this podcast now, talking to you about all of our great signings and telling you how us and Carlisle were going to romp the league and go back into League Two. And hopefully, in a few weeks' time, I might be able to do that. But it's just all
fingers crossed for you, Dave,
because we haven't got anything else to hang our hat on, unfortunately.
Yeah. Honestly, mate, we're all pulling for you. We really are. Like, we're not just saying that.
Do you know what, Dan? Do you know what? I can't believe the strength of feeling for us in the last few weeks since this happened from all corners of the football world. Really, I've never had as many messages on social media, private messages, as what I've had in the. I mean, I get abuse usually, but as many messages as I've. No, it's part of the course, isn't it? I've never had as many messages. I'm literally getting 100 messages a day or more every single day, still coming. And when my phone's pinged half a dozen times already during this conversation, and they're coming from all sorts of former players, wives and girlfriends of former players, people in America, Scotland, all sorts, just really just rooting for us. And I say the same thing to everyone, and that's, well, if you could put the Euro Millions on that and write us a check, that might solve the situation, because I think it probably is as simple as that, really. But sad times. Hopefully, I can talk to you again in a few weeks, gents, and Morecambe Football Club still exists and we're still in the National League. But we'll wait and see.
Yeah, well, we're all pulling for you, mate. We really
absolutely,
are.
Yeah.
Keeping an eye on everything for you, and hopefully it all works out for the best. And like you
sign
say,
the contract, Jason.
Yeah, sign the contract. We'll be back in a couple of weeks, and we'll be talking about Carlisle and Morecambe running away with the league.
Well, let's hope so, Dan. Let's hope so. Let's hope so. But thank you for giving me the platform, lads. It's really appreciated. Sorry, it's not being in better circumstances.
Our pleasure, mate.
All the very best, Dave.
Yeah, all the best. And you take care, mate. And hopefully we'll have you back on in a few weeks' time. And
I'd love to. Anytime.
Anytime.
You can talk about actual football stuff now. Sorry to take up the first half an hour of the show, but regular listeners, I apologise. But talk about fun stuff now.
This is important.
It's an important subject, and we want to highlight it because, like you say, the lack of national media coverage is shocking. So if we can highlight it even in a small way, we're happy to help in that way. So thanks for coming on, mate. Much appreciated.
No problem at all. Dan, Craig, Mark, thanks very much indeed. Hopefully I'll speak to you soon in better circumstances.
Yeah.
See you soon, Dave.
All the best. Take care.
Yeah, so thanks to Dave for jumping on with us. Obviously wanted to get a Morecambe insight onto how things are going there, which it makes for grim listening and grim reading. It really does. Our thoughts go out to their fans and everything, because no one likes to see a club on the brink like that. Mark knows only too well how that feels. So hopefully we'll get Dave back on in a few weeks, and everything will be a bit more rosy for him, and we can talk in a bit more positive manner about things. But moving on from Macclesfield, moving on from Morecambe, we will move to Macclesfield. We're going to talk about Robbie Savage and his move to Forest Green. Craig, we'll come to you, mate. Obviously, this was a move that ruffled a few feathers, shall we say. Robbie Savage obviously got Macclesfield promoted last season, had a really good season, run away with the league. He's now got his move. He's took a few players with him. What's your thoughts on it, mate?
Yeah, so my thoughts are going to be not biased, not the right word, but obviously Mark below us is obviously much closer to the ground with this. Obviously, I'm a neutral looking in, but I think some of my thoughts are going to be pretty similar as well. Do I think it's a good move for Savage? No. I think you've looked at Forest Green over the last couple of years, and I think it was last year somebody mentioned they were playing in the same league as Ipswich, and then 2 years later they were 4 divisions apart. So they feel like they're sliding down the pyramid, and the chairman there has made some interesting choices with Troy Deeney and players like that, and this just seems to be the next one on the list for me. I don't think it's a good decision for Forest Green. I don't think it's a good decision for Robbie Savage. I think what he was building at Macclesfield and obviously everything they've been through before, and now the grass was very green there, and there was no reason for him to move on. He was settled. He'd built a very good squad. He was probably, obviously Mark will go into more detail on this, be competitive in the National League North towards the upper reaches of the table you'd expect as well. And now he's into a new team. He's taken some players with him. And for me, 6 months. 6 months I think it will last, if that. And I think he will want to come back. It seemed from Macclesfield's side, obviously, again, Mark will speak about this more later, that it seemed very amicable at the end, but that was just the statements that I've read. Obviously, I'm not close to the ground in that sense. He's been a big part of what they've done over the recent years, and they've wished him well, but he talked about building a legacy there, and then at one of the first chances, he's jumped ship and moved on, and I don't think if he's moved on for the right project either. But that's my opinion on it all.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it has come across as a bit hypocritical. Some of the stuff he said when he took the Macclesfield job, like you say, he wanted to build some kind of legacy. And to me, the first real opportunity to jump ship, and he's jumped. And I think, obviously, he said about Troy Deeney, they had Duncan Ferguson as manager as well. They've gone down this route numerous times now. And it's like, this is just the latest in a list of potential bad decisions. And Forest Green, for me, as a Carlisle fan, the one thing we were saying last season was we don't want to do a Forest Green and do back-to-back relegations and get stuck in the National League, which is obviously be this season for us. So it's interesting because I think, for me, I don't see any positives in the Forest Green area as in why they've gone for Savage. I've said to you privately, in message and stuff, just saying, like, I feel like a lot of managers, even rookie managers like Savage, could have won that league comfortably with the team he had, with the budget, with the players and stuff. So I don't know. I'd love to get Mark's take on this, because obviously Mark's a lot closer to the club than what we are. So Mark, the floor is yours, mate. Let us know your thoughts, mate.
Well, it's either going to be a milestone or a millstone. Let me just clear a couple of things up, which I've seen, which has been about the ignorance of some folks on socials as to what Robbie Savage was at Macclesfield FC. He wasn't the owner. He had 20% in the club, which was given to him when Robert Smethurst asked him to come on board. He sold 10% to a couple of investors. The other 10% has now gone as well, but he never, ever owned the club. Never owned the club. So let's just get that myth out of the way. As himself, Robbie, I'm not going to backtrack on anything I said in the past. What Robbie did for the club, I mean, we were getting people coming down purely to see him. He denied. I did tell him one time, I said, they come to watch the match, but they also come to see you. That's worth it alone for some of them. if you heard some of the chants that were directed in his way, but it was the way it's been done. It was giving us the targets of get to the playoffs, possibly win the league, have a good FA trophy run, an FA Cup first round, which we've never done. Isaac Buckley Ricketts had signed, got all the players signed, and then this happens. I mean, he was spotted at Forest Green's training ground when just before Steve Cottrell went, and it was, what's happening here? But do not, nobody should promise anybody the earth and then just give them a rock, saying that it is, because that was a lousy way to do it. It was a lousy way to do it. And I'm going to get a bit of stick off Forest Green fans here, but so be it. I don't see the upside to it. I really don't see the upside to it, because Robbie was a rookie manager. Again, we had the players, we had, the budget, which isn't as high as everybody makes it out to be as well. I'll just wash that as well. But I think it was inevitable that Robbie would become a manager, a coach, whatever the modern term is these days, because a director of football was not for him. And I described it a year ago as an itch he needed to scratch, which he went ahead and did it. Got his coaching badges, still continuing to take his coaching badges, so he's not just dropped out of a position and put himself in there. He's gone the right way. I've no problem with that. He attracted quite a few good players who then turned into great players because of the way it was run. I mean, it was a camaraderie, and there's still that there. I mean, Peter Band, one of our coaches, and a person I know very, very well, under John Rooney now. We do have John Rooney as manager. He's not player manager. I mean, we're never after Wayne. Let's quash that as well. Absolutely ridiculous. Alan Nixon, you should be ashamed. But it's still the same. But the thing was Robbie's personality. Robbie's personality will always shine through. Whether you love him or hate him, you've gone there to see him. And it's, as I say, it was the way it was done. I mean, signing his 2-year deal and telling us what was going to happen. And that's what has hurt a lot of the Mac fans. It's hurt me in particular. I mean, he apparently turned down Northampton last season. I mean, if you know they're going to go at some point, then fair enough. But don't give us the impression that you're going to be here so somebody can approach you. It was a bit underhanded to me. Yeah, very underhanded.
I think even just from like neutrals, I think obviously I'll speak to Craig as well, but just like kind of, it seems a massive risk when they should have learned from the past mistakes. Like obviously we said Duncan Ferguson, Troy Deeney. Why have they not gone for a more experienced manager? You know, like I feel like you're just not learning from your mistakes.
I mean, they had a fella. What was his name? David? Was it David Waterhouse? I think he's now a coach at Manchester United. But I know that Charlie Savage played there on loan when he was at United, and Robbie went there a lot. Mark Bowen, director of football, was there with Robbie for Wales and Blackburn. Now, that's quite the pull if you're going to go anywhere. But, I mean, John McMahon has gone with him as well. the former Morecambe assistant manager to Derek Adams. Obviously, Laurent Mendy's gone there, Neil Kengley's gone there, Trey Pemberton's gone there. So they've sort of, it's like skipping a year at school or something like that. But they've signed a goalkeeper called Luke McNicholas from Wrexham. They've got the fella from Eastbourne. It's if you fail there, you are not rewarded with a second chance. Steve Cottrell finished third. That's not too bad. He built on that. But again, failure brought its own reward with the sack. And that's what Robbie has got to look out for. The safety net of Macclesfield has gone. The one thing he doesn't want to do is have a bad season, gets relieved of his duties, and then just goes into free fall. It's harder to come back than it is to go in.
Yeah, I think if it doesn't work out for him, I do wonder potentially, obviously depending on how bad it goes, if it didn't work out, what he would do, because like you say, the safety net of the lower divisions might not want to touch him after this because of the way he's just left Macclesfield, behind and things like that. So it does make you wonder. Obviously taking 3 players with him, like you mentioned as well. Do you think that'll have a massive impact as well?
Well, it depends on who.
Well, obviously the 3 players he's took with him was Mendy, Pemberton, and
Neil Kengley.
Yeah.
Neil Kengley.
Do you think they'll make a massive impact at Forest Green while they're there?
There's only one way to find out. Laurent Mendy can play anywhere. I mean, he out of the 3, I think, was probably going to be the most interesting transition into that league, because he plays in a very, very sort of very laid back style, but he can turn it on. He can turn it on when he wants to. I mean, I think it was the Bamber Bridge game, 1-0 down, and he took the game by the scruff and then scored a belting 30-yarder to make it 1 each. That's what he can do. If Robbie plays him in midfield, he will go from strength to strength. Trey Pemberton, not a natural fullback. He was a winger at Stafford Rangers. And Neil Kengley, winger. Jesus. Marine, who he scored the goal against Tottenham in the FA Cup. Now, you got 2 wingers acting as fullbacks there, and there is some damn good talent in that National League. I mean, I think they better be whooping for joy that Jack Stevens has gone to Oldham. Hell of a signing. But the only way, full-time football might suit them. You never know. It might be suitable for them, but we'll have to see. But out of the 3, I see Mendy benefiting from it the most, because as I say, he can play anywhere. Central defence, can play right back. He can do the defensive midfield. He can go attacking midfield. He's even played in goals as well. So I can see why Robbie went for him, because he's versatile as anything. With Trey and Neil, let's see. If they can cope with some of the best in that league, then they can call it a success. But let's have a look sort of the end of the year, I think. But they're not irreplaceable.
I mean, that's obviously good for Macclesfield, and I think that takes us quite nicely. I mean, as long as Mark, you feel like you've said your piece, but I feel like that takes us nicely onto transfers. We obviously discussed that we were going to say some transfers that have stood out to us over the summer.
Yes.
we've picked it. We've picked three apiece. Craig, I'll come to you first for your list, mate. Obviously, there's been some big movers, and shakers over the summer. Who were the transfers that have caught your eye, mate?
No problem. So the three I looked at was one moving out of the division, so moving up, which, to be fair, this summer especially I've noticed there's been quite a few that are taking that step up into the Football League. So I've picked one from there. I've picked one going across, so moving from one National League club to another. And I can't remember who my third one was. One moving up, so one moving from the National League South. The first one I went for was Will Davis going to Fleetwood in League Two from Sutton. A classic case of, for me, always persevering, always trying. We had him at Braintree for a 6-month spell, maybe not even that, after he left Leiston. So he was at Leiston in step 3, scored a hatful of goals, moved on to Braintree at step 2, National League South at the time. And within 14 games, he'd scored 7 league goals, and York came knocking. We let him move on to York. It was a perfect move for him at the time, and it ultimately failed for him. And I think we've seen on X over the last couple of months, I think he scored against York for Sutton, that him and the chairman had a little bit of bad blood between them as well, and some talk of a Gucci bag in there. But he got a loan move to Bromley, which almost didn't work, and he alwast had to reset and start again at Sutton. And for me, that was the best decision he's made. He flew this season, was right up there. Not quite at Ollie Pearce's level of scoring goals, but I believe it was 23 he scored this season, which ultimately is a very good kind of return. And he's now moving on to Fleetwood in League Two. So ultimately, he's got what he wanted. He wanted that league move, and he's now waved at York and their chairman on the way past. So a very good move for him, and one that I'll be watching closely. Any ex-Braintree player that steps into the Football League, I like to see how well they do with Alex Ravel, if anyone remembers him being
yeah.
Stevenage
manager.
Him and Andy Yeardham are the two standouts that have played for Braintree and stepped
Barnet?
into mainly Reading. He spent a lot of time at Yeardham as well, didn't he, I believe? If that's how I'm pronouncing it correctly. We'll get on to pronunciations later. Dan's got a cracking one for later.
Yeah. That'll be good.
Yeah, so moving up, again, I'm focusing on an ex-Braintree player again here. I felt he should have stepped up with Braintree last season, but it didn't quite happen for Aaron Blair. He done really well for us in the 23-24 season in the National League South, but couldn't agree terms with Braintree to come into the National League with us, so moved to Maidstone. Scored a lot of goals there as well, and seemed to really polish his game up that little bit more as well. Because at Braintree, it was almost a running joke that he'd need 5 chances to score. But his tireless approach, you'd see him up against centre-halves that are almost twice his size, and it'd give him a run for his money. It'd never let them rest, and it'd cause a lot of mistakes. And almost other players would often get the rewards for his hard work as they came on later on in the game and kind of got the rewards from the tired players around them. But he went to Maidstone, knuckled down. Unfortunately for him, couldn't get them up. But then Eastleigh come knocking this year, and I think it'll be a fantastic move for him. And it's one with a bit of intrigue because he was at Dagenham and Redbridge and never really got a chance. Braintree moved into the National League and he didn't get a chance. Now he's getting his chance. Will he be able to take it? So that's a very interesting one again that I'm going to watch very closely. And the one moving across for me is Dan Creaney from Tamworth to Solihull. He's been a stalwart for Tamworth for a good 5 years. He's been a consistent goal scorer. Some seasons a little bit interrupted, and it felt like he was part of the furniture there. But with a team like Tamworth obviously being part-time and the security around it for the players, once Solihull come knocking, it was probably an opportunity he couldn't refuse. Now, the intrigue for me is it going to be he was good in their system, he was good for them, good for the manager. It's all been very, very consistent for him for the last 3 or 4 years, stepping up with the same team each time, stepping up with a core of players that they've kept over the years. He's now gone a little bit into the unknown. Will he be able to adapt to a new team, maybe a slightly different style as well, and just how he will fare in new surroundings. But I think we all agree he's been an outstanding player, so I'm confident that he will be a success there.
Yeah, I mean, I think he'll score goals. He was actually on my list as well. Obviously, Craig was there first, so I took him off my list. But the goals he scored last season, he scored goals pretty much, consistently. I think as long as the team he's going to, Solihull, create chances for him, he'll score, won't he? I can't see that one not working unless he gets injured and things like that, which could get in the way. I'll do my list next before we come to Mark. First on my list was Regan Linney to Carlisle from Altrincham. Regan Linney's a
I
player
wonder
I've
why.
watched. Well, Regan Linney's a player I've watched for a long time. Me and my dad went to a few FC United and Manchester games just after COVID, 2021-22 time. And the lad's work rate, his goal, like different types of goals that he scores outside the box, poaches goals, runs he makes, a lot similar to what Craig was saying before about like work rate. Like other people work well off him as well because of him closing defenders down, chasing lost causes. Like I say, he will score goals, but it's the work rate, and it's something Carlisle's been missing, especially last season up front. That the work rate, the closing people down, especially towards the back end of last season, there wasn't really a lot of that going on. So I'm looking forward to seeing him, and I think he will score goals as long as we create for him, which is something that also Carlisle's been struggling with, creating goals and chances for people. But I think he will be a success, and I'm looking forward to seeing him. Second on my list, we'll try. We'll go for Manny Deserve. I hope I've pronounced that right. I'm sorry if I haven't. Obviously, ex-Grimsby, Salford striker. He's just moved from Hartlepool to Rochdale. Rochdale have done some great business this summer. There was a couple of players in there that I couldn't decide between, but I've gone for him. He's scored goals wherever he's been, but last season and the season before for Hartlepool, scoring lots of goals. Again, I think just in any league, but in the non-leagues, you just want someone who's going to score goals and take chances, because a lot of games will be on a knife edge and it's one chance, one goal, and that could be the difference. So I think for him, it's important that he gets service as well. Like any good striker, they're going to need service. But I think for him and Rochdale, I think Rochdale look like they're doing some good business and could be the real deal this season. And my third one is Harry Boyes to Southend from Sheffield United. He's highly rated. I've seen a lot of comments from Sheffield United fans and people on social media, but he's got a lot of EFL experience. I actually looked him up. He's been on loan at Fleetwood, Wickham, Lincoln, Forest Green, and then he was at Solihull Moors as well on loan. So he's got for the lad his age, he's got a lot of experience. So I'm excited to see what he brings. He's a very attacking fullback, so he'll be getting up and down the wing, creating chances. Hopefully he does the defensive side well as well. But these wing backs, it's more about getting forward and creating chances than it is defending these days. So yeah, he's another one. I think Southend, that is a real coup for them to come down from Sheffield United. He's got to have something about him. So they're my three. So Mark, to finish us off, who are your three, mate?
Well, the first one I'm going for is Cody Johnson at Halifax, and went from Stockport County. He was very, very highly thought of at Stockport County. Had a lot of loan moves, but I think Halifax, now that they've got Adam Lakeland as manager, it's always sometimes with Halifax, it was always like a horses for courses signings. But Johnson, I think he's still about 21, 22 years of age. Perfect signing. And Lakeland is a young manager himself, ex-Curzon Ashton and Kings Lynn. So he knows where to go. And I think for Cody Johnson's career, that now he's got away from Stockport. They're packed a wealth of talent at Stockport. Now's the time for him to come in and say, right, this is what I can do. And I think Adam Lakeland is the right manager for him. I think Halifax is the right club for him. They play Mac in a pre-season friendly next Saturday, so I'll see for myself. I hope he proves me right, but not that right. My second one I've already mentioned, in Laurent Mendy at Forest Green. simply because he's an all-round player. I called him at Mac the non-league Desai, and I got a few sniggers about that. But when, as I say, when he took up the Bamber Bridge game by the scruff of the neck, that's what a captain does. That's what Desai used to do, and that's what Mendy can do. Put him in midfield. He's a good defender, but he's an even better midfielder because he drives them forward. And if he goes into the midfield of Forest Green, then his stock will rise. He really will, because he's that good a player. I've got all the faith in the world in Laurent, getting there still at a reasonable age, no problems. But as Craig mentioned as well, when he put off his list, there is a lot of talent going into the Football League. I mean, you've seen it with Curzon Ashton and Trevor Sinclair's son, Isaac Sinclair, going to Accrington.
Yeah.
So anything is possible. I mean, and as you said, Dan, the levels, even to National League North and South, there's not too many distinguishing things there. So, but my third one, you went for Regan Linney. I have gone for Alex Newby going to York. The yin to Linney's yang. Excellent little player. Excellent player. Josh Stones and Ollie Pearce. You bet you're in for a treat. I watched him for Altrincham against Mac in the FA Trophy last year. If the conditions were better, I would have had a better understanding. But he play out wide, go in behind, support the striker, and 15, 16 goals, and God knows how many assists. For Regan Linney. And for York to get him on a free transfer, he could turn out to be one of the bargains of the season, one of the more eye-catching signings of the season. He's very, very good, and Altrincham will miss him. They'll miss Linney. They'll miss the fella who's just gone to Grimsby as well. But Newby, Josh Stones and Ollie Pearce, you're in for a treat.
Yeah, I mean, Newby was another one that was on my list as well. I think Ollie Pearce is already a scoring machine. With Newby with him, that's going to add at least another 5 to 10 goals comfortably this season on top of what he's already scoring. So York are going to be a force to be reckoned with this season as well. So yeah, I think we picked some really exciting players. And just touching on what Craig said, there is a lot of players that they're getting moves out of the league and going up a few leagues, and I think people are finally starting to see the standard in non-league now, and taking a chance on some non-league players, because obviously if you're trying to sign certain players from certain teams, it costs a bit of money, whereas if you delve into non-league, you could find little rough diamonds and little gems and polish them into something outstanding. So I think
look at Barnet. They've taken Halifax's two of the best players at Halifax. Emmanuel Otadibi's gone from Forest Green to Barnet as well. So I think it's about when you have younger managers. I mean, Craig Mann has just taken over at Fylde. They're going to know, because they've been playing alongside these players as well. So they're going to know their strengths, they're going to know their weaknesses, and I think the days now of horses for courses managers is dying out.
Yeah.
And it's got to. I'll see what John Rooney does at Mac.
Yeah.
We signed Joseph Yarney from Boreham Wood yesterday. Because he knows what he can do. It's very much a youth movement. I'm sounding like an old fogey now, but there very much is a youth movement in management. And that can only be a good thing, because it'll make some of the other managers think, hang on a second, I've got to keep up with these guys. And they'll have to. But it's great for the non-league that players can make it there.
Mm-hmm.
Whether
Yeah.
it's
I think it's important that the managers know who they're signing, and that if they've played with them before or they've coached them before. We're seeing a lot of that these days as well, and I think it makes sense, doesn't it? And I think it'd be like any job anywhere, really. Like if you know someone's a good worker or whatever, you're going to take them with you. It's a really good idea. But I think that's a good place to finish for us for my first show. Thanks, Dave,
well
for
done,
joining
Dan.
us. Thanks, Dave, for joining us for his Morecambe insight. Hopefully we'll have him back on with some more positive news at some point. Thanks to Mark and Craig for joining me as well.
Pleasure.
It's been a real pleasure. Enjoyed it. We'll be back next week. Thanks, everyone, for watching the Deck and National League podcast. We'll see you soon. Take care.
Tally ho.